Do it. Let's have ourselves a Rowdy-Dow, boys.
You guys ready for
Get
this?
get that cunny juice out your mouth.
This is Jameson's, huh? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Nightcap.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Happy to have you guys back.
We're
Where's okay? Well,
we're running
missing
one
someone.
man short. I don't know. He's supposed to be here. Where's he at? Where's Gabe the Butcher?
Showing up.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh man, here he
Oh,
goes.
fucking A.
Comes in like the
All right.
king.
Now it's a party. Now it's a party.
There we go. Let's get it going.
What are you drinking over there? Is that a little Welch's grape? What do you got?
A little Welch, little grape.
Okay. Well, there you go.
What about you, Al? What are you drinking tonight?
Oh, I'm still on that Truly iced teas. This is like my go-to right now. It's so tasty and it'll knock you on your ass because it doesn't taste like alcohol.
Are these like the modern Four Locos right now? Or is that what that is?
I guess.
Not
I don't
as
know.
harsh. Nowhere near as harsh as the OG Four Locos.
Oh my God. We can go in for days about Four Loco stories.
Little Jameson and cold brew. All right, keeping it classy for these ruffians over here.
All right.
For
Sounds
these
good to
classy
me.
times.
For the classy times, exactly. Man, I like that. Speaking of which, look at that crown right now. Look at, straight from Burger King.
It's
There you go.
fancy. He got that big from buying all the GameStop stock.
Yeah, all that, you just cashed in on that GameStop stock. Yeah, attaboy.
The stonks.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna be doing Gangs in New York tonight. You guys ready for this or what?
I'm ready. I love this movie. Let's do it.
All right, let me break into the synopsis right now. But if it's your first time watching the show, welcome. This is the Nightcap. A big part of what we do is we watch the movies, we give them a full review, but we also do grading. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the grades up right now for anybody not hasn't seen the show before. We also keep the grades always in the notes, so you can always check those out there. Also, don't be afraid. Hit the like and subscribe button. Help us out
Free.
with the algorithm. We're all slaves to the algorithm. It's 2021, so throw us a bone. All right, here we go into the synopsis. All right, Gangs of New York is a 2002 American epic historical crime film that was directed by Martin Scorsese, set in New York City slums, inspired by the Herbert Ashbury 1927 nonfiction book The Gangs of New York. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Cameron Diaz. In 1863, a long-running Catholic-Protestant feud erupts into violence just as Irish immigrant group is protesting the low wages caused by an influx of freed slaves, as well as the threat of conscription. Scorsese spent 20 years developing the project until Harvey Weinstein, yes, that Harvey Weinstein, and his production company, Miramax Films, acquired it in 1999. The film had a budget of $100 million and a
Okay.
box office of $193 million.
That's it.
So-
I'm disappointed.
Yeah,
in
it
that
did pretty
number.
good, but wasn't as critically acclaimed as I thought. Actually, looking up here, it's saying pretty much average score of around 73 on
Oh.
Tomatoes, which is kind of strange because
That's
to me it's always
soggy.
considered like almost like a cult classic now. And maybe
Yeah.
it's just aged better since that time. But I don't remember the first time I seen it. I definitely didn't see it in the theaters. It was something that kind of slipped past me. At first, I didn't really get it. Maybe that was a problem with some other people too.
Mhm.
Like I didn't really get the trailer. I didn't really know what it was about. Because you hear Gangs of New York, but it's not obviously the gangs that we're used to growing up in the 90s. Where I'm used to guys, wearing Dickies, you know what I mean? And there's a bunch of guys
Ben
with,
Davis.
with striped t-shirts running around, hacking themselves together. I was like, okay, what's going on here? But hey, man, Crips and Bloods, they did it first, right? 5 points.
I actually really wanted to watch this in the theater just because, it was Leo and then Martin Scorsese and Gangs. I'm like, all right, well, I'm in. Never got the chance to, but I finally watched it when it finally came out on DVD, and I loved it ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the advertising for it. I remember it was pretty big buzz about the advertising, just doing all the commercials and stuff, but I didn't see it in theaters either.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the plot itself. I mean, this is very much an epic plot. Like they said, Scorsese spent decades trying to develop the film. He was very interested in the time period. And, the historical setting is as much a character as anything else in this. The movie itself, starts off with a young, Amsterdam. We see him with Liam Neeson's playing his father, Brees Fallon. Obviously we see him get slain right away in the beginning, and this kind of sets the ball rolling here on this kind of revenge plot. We get to meet Bill the Butcher, who does, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, does an excellent job. see those kind of characters. I wouldn't say there's like a huge character arcs here, maybe with Valen's character Amsterdam, because he gets to see him kind of become a man and stuff. But just the setting, and there's just so much going on here at the time with the characters, but also with the setting, right? There's a lot of politics, everything's going on in the Civil War. So overall for plot, I end up giving it an 8. Okay. Very ambitious. And I think Scorsese did a pretty good job. What do you think, Al?
I actually gave it a lower score than that. I gave it a 6 just because. Oh, wow. I felt like it was just I don't want to say basic, but it was a revenge plot that we're all used to. But it was such an era of such a big scope with like the Civil War, the draft, all these riots and all that it made it seem bigger than it was. But if in essence, it was literally just a revenge plot. It was a revenge
if you reduce it down.
Yeah.
What about you, Gabe? What'd you give in terms of plot?
I gave it a 9. I liked the time period. Like there was a lot going on at that time. They tried to do as best as he could. Scorsese tried to do the best that he could to kind of like tie it all in. But it was kind of cool to see like the big boats coming in, the people coming in, Bill the Butcher just waiting for them just to cuss them out. Like I just liked, and it was a revenge story as well. You gotta love those revenge stories. Just kind of the progress of how everything was just kind of building and building and building to that final fight scene. So I give it a 9. I give it a pretty high score.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right too. One thing like you touched on too was like, to me, it's a very like underserved time period, especially the kind of the approach where it's specific to like New York City, right? In the slums. Like we've seen this time of Civil War, obviously, and stuff, but nothing getting like so nitty gritty, like in this urban feel to kind of get a feel of what these, the Irish were going through at this time. So I thought that was pretty
hard
cool.
living. A lot of hard living during that time. A lot
of hard living.
Very hard living.
Not pleasant at all.
Like I already said too, I mean, the setting is very much a character in this. Let's talk about the production. Now, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Oh, I'll kick it off. All right. 20 out of 20. That's how I kick it off.
That's my boy.
Because the soundtrack, the score, the costumes, and the massive sets. Here's a little fun fact for you guys. All this was filmed in Rome in massive sets that were literally miles long.
Boppity.
Yeah. Boopity boop.
Boopity boopity.
Literally miles long, and no facades. There was no facades. Every building was a functional building that had insides, everything in it. There was no just like backdrop where it's like, stills at the very back. None of that. So that's a big undertaking. So I had to give it I had to give it a perfect score for that.
That's true. Yeah. Gabe, what'd you give it in terms of production?
After hearing that, I don't know why, but I give it a 19. I should have given it a 20, but I'm gonna give it a 19. I'm gonna stick with my score, 19. And the only reason I say the 19, you know what? The 19 is because the music. There was like moments of glory for the music, but there was like the intro fight scene. You kind of get like that hip hop ish. I'm like, you want to hear like that kind of like that music at that time, and there was moments of that, but I felt like the soundtrack was just kind of a little bit all over the place. And it wasn't bad. It just like, I want to kind of feel that time. Kind of want like a Braveheart type soundtrack. Like when you watch Braveheart, you really feel like the strings. I kind of like that stuff. As far as the sets go, I mean, man, this is just like the knit and grit, right? The detail on this movie, like everyone looks dirty. The city looks like in shambles. Yeah. Like it looks like super raw. Like there's like dirt on the guy's fingernails. Like, I mean, it just like totally hit home. Like on just the costumes are on point. Just for that time period, it really just brought it to life. It brings you square of just like the grit, like the caves. Like it just makes you think like, man, this was a huge production. They put a lot of effort into it, but you feel like that sticky, like dirty, grimy, under the underground like street, like
dirt under the fingernails. Like you said, everyone just feels like this is like a movie that almost feels like it has a smell to it, right? These are the characters you look at.
Smell this movie.
Yeah. You could smell it, feel it. The costumes, like I said, just costumes are on point. So yeah, I gave it a 19.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the music. I ended up giving it an 18, and for that very reason too. As far as the sets, epic. The costumes are great, and you see Bill, especially walking with his suspenders and those plaid pants, like pulled up to like his freaking torso.
Giant so much drip.
Yeah,
Bill the Butcher had drip. He had so much drip.
What do you call it? It's epic. But the two things: the music, when they did like the period music, where the guys are like singing the Irish folk songs and stuff like that, perfect. I love it. But like you said, the opening fight scene, it gets like the little modern music is a little hokey. And then even towards the end too, they interjected a little U2. And look, I get it. U2's Irish band. I get it. All right.
I get it too.
But I'm not a fan. And it took me out of it. Yeah. So that, and then also too, some of the fight scenes in the beginning, you could tell that Scorsese is not really an action guy. It wasn't bad, but
It wasn't
necessarily
going to
good
be
either.
Braveheart,
It
guys.
wasn't
No,
Braveheart, yeah.
it
Yeah,
wasn't Braveheart.
yeah, and I want to say that too.
A little rough.
Yeah, I want to say that too, because like, you know, you walk in a fight, especially a big riot like that, and there was blood going, but you walking in with knives like that, you know, like, dude, there's gonna be some real bad, gory stuff going on. And I didn't see the squirts. There's a few squirts here and there, but I want to see some
You
squirts.
didn't see the Tarantino squirts?
Yeah, dude, I want, like, you know, I mean, you're walking in with a knife. Are you kidding me right now? You're walking in with a knife. You better come back with some squirts.
All right. Maybe for the battles, if Scorsese kind of like pawned it off to Quentin Tarantino really quick for the fight scenes, then maybe it would have been better.
Especially even for the ending, you know what I mean? When Bill and Amsterdam finally like square off, like I felt like they could have stepped it up there a little bit more on that.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into that yet. I don't want to get into the ending yet, but that's the only bummer for me.
Hey, I mean, I still give it an 18. I mean, just like I said, the setting and the costumes alone are worth it. And even coming back and watching it now, the movie's almost 20 years old, 19 years old, and it still looks pretty damn impressive. Cinematography too. And I didn't actually get on this in the synopsis. The movie was actually nominated for 10 Academy Awards. Didn't win any.
Yeah,
didn't win any, but it was nominated.
Out.
The cinematography was one of them, and there was some really great scenes, like swooping scenes and like tracking scenes. But then also too, there was a couple of parts too where like there was like continuity issues. You could tell, and Scorsese, I saw an interview too. He said like he made these guys do like multiple takes, like 20 takes for like one scene, and you could kind of tell because sometimes guys would be standing like right here, and then the next scene they're like kind of like this, you know, kind of like that, and it would kind of like, I don't know, throw me off a little bit. But overall, I mean, it's done really well just for the scope of it too. And this is like a 3-hour movie, so they kept it going. But let's get into the meat and potatoes here, right? Let's get into the acting and the directing. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Al, go ahead, go first. Let's get into the acting.
Okay, well, I'll just keep the ball rolling. This is the first perfect score I'm giving for acting. 30 out of 30. The acting across the board was fine. It was great. But that 30 was for Daniel Day-Lewis. Let's just, let's get that out of the way, because
let's be real. Yeah.
He literally chugged this movie along. Like you said, it's almost a 3-hour movie, and it dragged in some points, but the one that was keeping it going was Bill the Butcher, because he eats up every scene that he's in. You want to, like, your eyes are glued to him in every scene.
Yeah.
But like I said, but the acting across the board was good. Like Leo did a great job. Liam Neeson, like, I wish he would have stayed alive a little bit longer. Granted, like he had to die because that's pretty much what moves the story forward. But I would have liked to see him go back and forth with, like, Bill the Butcher a little bit more. But maybe had a little flashbacks with those two, because they seem like they had such a long history together. I would have loved to see that. And Cameron Diaz, that little prim stargazer, she actually did a good job. And shout out to Cameron Diaz. She really did. She's from that Long Beach. All right, she's from LBC. Shout out to her too.
Gabe, what'd you give in terms of acting?
I give it a 29. And again, this is Bill the Butcher, right? He's just the man, the myth, the legend in this movie. He really is. Like, like every scene that he comes in, it's just like, all right, like, what's this guy gonna do or say, or who's he gonna kill? And the guy is just like so, like, just unpredictable in every scene that he's kind of in. The guy is like the guy, that character is just like so crazy, where like he can sweet talk your sweet mother, right? And then and then the next one he's like killing her. You just don't even know what's gonna happen next with that guy. Like
when he's giving that old lady meat, and he's like, "Here you go, mother."
Really,
and he's
my
like,
mother.
"He's like, that's not my mother." He's like, "Yeah, Bill, I know."
He's not really my mother.
But it's like, if you said the wrong answer, like you say the wrong answer, like, "Oh, I thought that was your mom." Like, get a freaking knife in your freaking chest. You know what I mean?
Like his opening monologue before the first fight scene, I could like rip that off line by line. Like, I found myself saying that like speech line by line when I was rewatching this movie. Like, bunch of crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags.
I've definitely heard you quote that more than a handful of times. So that's an Al favorite. I know that from a firsthand experience. But yeah, he's great in this movie. Kind of underrated in this is Cameron Diaz. Up until this point, I don't know. I'm trying to think, besides the mask, what she had done. And I mean, to see her in the series,
Something About Mary. There's Something About Mary.
That's a comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is like a very dramatic, very serious role, and she did a good job. I mean, really. I mean, her character's complex. You can see she has a history. You know what I mean? She's just not one-dimensional, like pretty face. Like, she's like the pickpocket, right? And she's got her history with Bill, and then obviously she meets Amsterdam's character. But she did well in all the scenes. Again, Daniel Day-Lewis's character in this, he just really just dominates. the screen. Like you said, it's just, he's got so much charisma and he's so dangerous at the same time. You just don't know what's going to happen. But I think really, and I don't want to get too much into it because we're getting into directing, it's really, he ends up becoming, even though he's not the main character, he's really like almost like the protagonist because he keeps propelling things along. You want to see what he's going to do more so than you want to see what Valen's going to do, because you already know kind of the course Valen's on. But yeah, he did excellent. In terms of grade, what did I end up giving it? Ended up giving it 28. So yeah, I thought it was a really, really good job. And the other actors too, the supporting cast. I mean, Gleason's in here as Monk. What's his
Riley?
name? Riley, right, as the sheriff as well. Everyone did really well. There's really no one that really stands out that you kind of cringe when they come on.
I want to say something about Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, watching this guy, like all these years that have gone by where this guy gets no love, no respect. And I'm watching this movie and it's like the guy is like a chameleon. I mean, he starts off as like a bum, like a street guy. Then he works his way into like being the gang guy. He's like making out with Cameron on the side, like that whole like a love guy. And then he's like the revenge guy. Then he's like the leader guy. Then he's the fighter guy. It's like, dude, there's not many actors out there that can kind of pull off all those traits in one freaking movie. I mean, there's maybe a guy that can do it like a few different things, but he pretty much evolves through that entire movie, and you don't even blink an eye. Like you just follow him along, and he's like believable. You know, he's believable that he's like all of a sudden become this leader. So I mean, that guy just needs to get more respect. I mean, I wish he would have got something for this. He really does a really good job along with Bill the Butcher on this.
Movie. I'm actually shocked that Daniel Day-Lewis did not win the Oscar for this. Like he got nominated, did not win it. And I'll back you up, Gabe, on the whole giving respect to Leo. I still think to this day, Leo should have gotten an Oscar for Calvin Candy in Django Unchained. He should have. That was one. That was my favorite. I'll say,
kind of touching back to one of our previous episodes we did on The Informer, when Gabe was giving out all his love about Common. I actually put something in my notes. I was like, Daniel Day-Lewis is the anti-Common, because one of the things you said was like, he has no tics. I was like, man, Daniel Day-Lewis, he has all the tics. Like he changes his accent, he changes his look, even like his facial mannerisms. Like he was doing this thing, like when he was getting anxious, you could tell he kind of like put his like in in his lip. You could see he was getting worked up. I mean, he's just transforms. And one of the scenes I really like a lot, which it's not really even says anything, is when he gets shot. And Leo like saves his life, but he gets like shot in the shoulder, and everyone's just kind of looking around like what's going to happen. And then Daniel Day-Lewis just screams, right? He just goes, yeah, like that. Like it was just like so perfect. Like you could just see the rage, like that he got shot, that someone actually had like the cojones to come up on him. He was like disrespected, you know what I mean? And he just like filled up with just like billowed out of him. And then at the end, right, what does he do? Tips his cap to Leo. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just, man, I can't say enough about his performance in this. I love it.
And we're talking about ticks. The guy ticks his freaking eye. The guy's, how's he do? I'm like, dude, that's crazy. The guy's ticking his fucking eye. I'm like, wow.
He poked his own eye out because he's ashamed of himself.
Because he looked away. Oh, another thing about Daniel Day-Lewis, as if we're not like having a big circle jerk for Daniel Day-Lewis.
Jerk away. Jerk away.
Of course, he got trained by actual butchers for this movie, and he got a world-class butcher flown from London to teach him how to be a real butcher.
This guy's a pro.
So of course he did.
It's a pro right here, bro.
Yeah. And funny, here's another fun fact. They're like, how do you get just so much rage and all that? He's like, I listen to Eminem every day when I was on set.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, wow. He listened to Eminem every day on the set to fill him with that rage.
Holy
so
moly.
I probably would have picked a little Slipknot, but hey, that's me. That's like 20-year-old
Steve. I want to say
this
about Bill the Butcher, though, to end the circle jerk, is like, you think about just that time frame where you just have, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people coming in, basically invading his territory. There's got to be like one or two badasses there that are coming off that ship looking to like take over or kind of overrun his, like what he's doing. But you feel like in that character, he's just so crazy. He's so gangster. Like he doesn't care what comes off that boat. He's like waiting for them to get off the boat. And I think that's what really, for me, looking at that character, and that's how powerful that he plays this character, is like, I don't believe that there's any person that really can come in and take that guy's spot. He's just that dangerous, that right. Crazy, and has that much charisma to pull off that character. So
I mean, he was literally at the boatyards, like, heckling them. And then he even said, he's like, He's like, if I had a gun, I'd shoot every one of those immigrants that came
Yeah.
off the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says it to their face. It's not like he's saying it under his fucking breath. The
No.
guy is like literally like throwing freaking
One thing I
rocks
think
at their head.
what's awesome too is that he balances himself out because, and this is kind of getting into the directing part too, just in this overall story, is he balances himself out by giving so much respect to Amsterdam's dad, Priest.
Yep.
Right? He's like, this was a great man, an honorable man. And he keeps his picture up. He's like, he's the only guy that was worth remembering of all the men I've killed. And, you know, and just talking about how he basically embarrassed them and let him live. But then he inspired him too to be even like a bigger
to raise up.
to raise up to a different level. And honestly, at the end, it's like getting into the directing side too. And this is maybe part of the movie where I think the movie kind of flails a little bit, is he really outclasses the protagonist, the hero, Leo's character. Because really, when you think about it, Leo like snakes up inside of him, gets, you know, plays a false persona, tries to befriend him, almost becomes like a son, and then is going to like try to assassinate him without him even knowing it in front of everybody. And you can almost feel like from Bill's character, like, geez, like your dad had at least the guts to call me out in front of everybody. We'll go fight out, you know what I mean? In like men out in the yard, so to speak, you know, call each other out, challenge each other, but you're going to try to like a weasel up to me and kill me, like pretending to be my, you know, my friend. Like you could just see that. And like at the end, you almost, at least for me watching it, I almost rooted for Bill. I'm like, this guy's, yeah, he's despicable, but somehow I like him. Like I'm rooting for him.
Because he has that charisma. And here's the thing, Leo's a revenge plot would have gone through if it wasn't for that ultimate simp, Johnny.
But I still too, like with you know, Bill the Butcher, like you talked about him just like framing the picture of Leo's dad. It's like, how badass is that? Like it's almost like a teeter-totter, because it's like, are you having that picture up because yeah, you respect him? But then there's that picture because yeah, I fucking killed that guy. That guy is under my
it's
fucking
a little
belt.
bit of both.
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But I love that he gave him the respect. You know what I mean? That's like, that's a true man. That guy has a mustache that you should be happy about. That's a true man right there. True man.
The finest beating I've ever took.
Yeah. I mean, it just, like I said, he's just such an interesting, complex character, but he's not all monster, I guess was my point, right? And like we touched on too, like with the scene with the mother, and then even when he meets like those people come from uptown and he knows them by name and he calls them out and he's actually courteous to them, right? He says, don't worry, no one's going to harm you here. Like I said, he's just not all like this one-dimensional Joker character where you're just like, okay, he's just a madman and you just never know what he's gonna do. Like, no, he knows what he's doing. There's a method to his madness. But let's get into the directing here. This movie's pretty long, and one thing I think kind of for me, like as much as I want to gush over this movie, and I feel like towards the second half of the movie, the first half moves at a very good rate, a very steady pace. And it's almost like, I almost put in my notes too, it's almost kind of Tarantino-esque. One thing I like about the first half of the movie, it's very self-aware. Like it knows that this time period is absurd. And like, it kind of makes fun of itself, right? Where he's like showing him around the city saying, there's nothing, you'll be fine, you'll be safe here. But they step over a dead body, right? And he's like, oh yeah, don't worry. Don't worry about that. So it's like I said, it's almost poking fun of itself. It's almost like mischievous. But when in the second half of the movie, where it starts to get more into like the politics and the Civil War and stuff like that, not that those things aren't interesting. I felt like it kind of derails though a little bit from the revenge plot itself. And it kind of drags a little bit because at this point, you're like, what's going to happen, right? Leo has this failed attempt at assassination, and then you have to see him kind of recover. And then we start hearing about the politics side. And like I said, this movie is very long and it kind of pushes a little bit. It's almost like a 4-act movie instead of a 3-act. And I felt like he got a little indulgent there at the end. Am I wrong?
I don't want to say you're wrong. I felt like Scorsese probably needed to inject those things just because it was that era. It was such a vocal point in that era that he felt like he needed to. I agree with you that I wish he didn't, just because it did take away from the story in regards to, the main story, Valen versus Bill the Butcher. But it didn't really, take it away from me because it didn't get too heavy-handed, at least not in the very beginning. He kind of laid the groundwork for it in the beginning, where you saw, tweet here and there, like he put the, little snippets about the draft and voting, but then it got a little heavy-handed towards the end. But I still, it didn't really bother me as much. I feel that it bothered you though.
Right on. What about you, Gabe? What did you think about the directing?
Yeah, I give the directing a 27. And I had the same kind of thoughts that you had, where it did kind of like go in different directions. Like you kind of want to stick with Bill, you kind of want to stick with Leo's character and all the the revenge story there. But it did kind of like teeter off into different things. And although those things are good, they weren't bad. They're entertaining, like the whole voting thing, the whole war thing. It's entertaining. It's giving you that kind of that time, that space. And again, it didn't, to me, it didn't really drag so much. But I felt that could have been maybe something that he could have just kind of laid off. He got a little bit indulgent in that. But the other one is too, I felt like maybe it's part of the story. Maybe it's part of the book. And those parts were really entertaining in the book, and he probably didn't want to leave them out so that anybody that had read the book is like, well, he just missed like the whole time frame of just what was going on with Lincoln and the draft and the riots and what was going on. So maybe he just had to feel that, hey, I got to sneak those things in. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, the story, the main guts of the story, I just, that's probably what it was taken away from, and that's where the score, I gave it a 27.
Now, what did you give it in score?
I gave it a 25. I think maybe more Scorsese try to inject those to give it a bigger scope, to make it more epic than just a basic revenge like plot thriller, if you will.
Yeah, I don't think that he necessarily should have cut those things out. I thought he could have trimmed it back a little bit, because I felt like at this point in the movie, I'm so invested in the characters. I felt like that part's the historical setting, but it needed to stay the setting. And at some points, it started like to impede in on the story, to where it was just kind of getting a little like muddled, and it was kind of taken away from the arcs of the characters. For instance, like let's get to the ending scene, right? When they're all lining up there for their this big battle royale. And then all of a sudden, the riots break out from the draft, and there's they're fighting in the streets, and there's like the standoff between the soldiers and the people fighting conscription, and then you see them in the two sides standing off, and it's just like I said, as a viewer, I'm getting kind of confused, like what am I supposed to be focusing on here?
Yeah.
So it just kind of distracted a little bit when I just didn't think it was necessary. Honestly, I was enveloped enough in the story where I was like, I kind of just wanted to see more of Bill, Bill the Butcher, and Amsterdam's character. Like that's enough for me. Like I don't need this other stuff. It's interesting, but I'm all in on these guys. So
yeah,
but yeah, not to take away from it, I end up giving a let me check my score here. Giving 26. So I actually give a higher score than you in the directing on that one.
Okay.
But let's move over into X Factor here. Let's actually go in reverse order this time. Gabe, what'd you give it in terms of X Factor?
I gave the X Factor an 8. I just like the time period of this movie. There's not that many that I know of, many movies that are in this era. And again, he tried to, touch on all kind of what was going on, the chaos in that time frame. So I just like, and then obviously just the whole the set, being so massive, and it just like really kind of brought that whole time and that feeling of just that city, that griminess of the city. So I gave it an 8 there for the X Factor.
Nice. Okay. Al?
I gave it a 9.
Okay.
Out of
wow,
10.
No 10?
No.
You all right, buddy? You feeling okay? Is that hat on a little tight?
Yeah. Is my crown in your eyes?
And here's the thing. It kind of goes back to the directing also. And it's funny because like you said he could have trimmed it more. Original cut of this movie, 3.5 hours long.
Oof.
So
Oof.
yeah.
Lord of the Gangs of the New York.
The Fellowship of the Gangs of New York. But I gave it a 9. I couldn't give it a perfect score because we got gypped off the final battle. Like I wanted it to be a full circle. It started with like the battle with Priest versus Bill the Butcher, and it should have been a final good like battle like that with like his son and Bill the Butcher. But instead we got a cop out where everything gets like, we talked about a big clusterfuck at the end pretty much. And we don't get a big face off. It's pretty much Bill gets hit by shrapnel and he's pretty much dead. And then like Leo just stabs him. And I'm like, come on, guys. So that's the reason why I couldn't give it a 9 out of 10. And
it feels anticlimactic. You know what I mean?
It does. Thank you.
That's kind of what I felt even towards the directing is like, as much as I'm like all in on the story, we're going, everything's trucking along. And then we kind of take this side journey. And by the time we get back on the main road, it just doesn't feel the same. You know what I mean? Like if they would have just kept heading like straight on the straight line and they would have had that, that, like I said, that battle between them and this face off, I felt like it would have been a little more satisfying. In terms of X Factor, I ended up giving it a 7. So, great performances. That's really what brings me back is Bill the Butcher. I mean, come on. If it's on television or something, you catch it, you're going to watch a few scenes just so you can see Daniel Day-Lewis, like you said, just suck all the air out of the room. And you just like, every time I still appreciate it.
This is Bill the Butcher cap right now.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of total score, I ended up giving it an 87. What'd you guys do?
I gave it a 90 out of 100.
Nice. All right. Gabe?
I give it a 92.
Ooh, there you go.
I know.
Oscar worthy,
again,
even though it never won any Oscars.
if he didn't slip on the circle jerk, I mean, that's basically what it is right now. I mean, Bill the Butcher held it down. He's a character that you can just always, just again, you want to catch a scene or two, and if it's on, but he's a very memorable character. I mean, that's just.
Absolutely.
I think I even will go as far as this. I would watch a prequel of that.
I will
Character prequel.
I
Make
will
it happen.
second that. I will second that. And then I'm also going to start my own gang, the Confederation of American Natives, in honor of Bill the Butcher.
One thing I saw in the notes, dead rabbits, apparently what that means is means very feared. It was like a derivative of like the Gaelic, which like it came from like two other words, and then if they reduce them down, they called it dead rabbits. I know it's kind of a stretch, but people, if we want to look into it, you can look it up. But yeah, so that's where the dead rabbits came from, because I was kind of thrown off. I'm like, oh, these guys have these cool names and dead rabbits. Like, where'd you get that? But
definitely doesn't have the ring of Confederation of American Natives.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have the ring. But for everyone out there watching, let us know what you guys think. Would you guys give it in terms of score? What'd you guys think? In terms of the directing, did you guys agree with us? Do you think it kind of dragged a little bit? Were you happy with it, or were you not that impressed? Maybe even with the performances. In the case where we're kind of gushing, then
you're wrong.
Well, leave your comments and let us know what you guys think, so we can get a feel, where we're at on that. But overall, great movie. Really enjoyed it. One of Scorsese's best movies, in my opinion. And I think another satisfying nightcap. So, you guys got anything else you guys want to say? Parting words?
Fuck the Chiefs and go Raiders, and have a good night, you fiddlin' Benz.
At least I died a real American.
See you in the bowl, baby.
This is a night for Americans.
Patty, he's an American.
Right on. Peace out, guys.